TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
If you need a trailer, Flat Rock Trailers has got you covered. From light-duty single-axle utility trailers to the big Tex tandem duals. We also carry a full
intro after this spot.
Trailers. Need a motorcycle trailer? We've got them. Need a dump trailer? We've got the largest selection in the state. Oilfield.
Talk for a second. Just
full line of big Tex trailers to
okay.
Repairs. We repair
Elliot.
The models. We'll even rent you a trailer if you need to use one for a day. Flat Rock Trailers, your number.
Yes.
Can you bring him up a little bit, Derek?
FlatRockTrailers.com.
This is the Baylor football postgame.
All right, and then just let me know what highlights you want.
Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, championship partner of Baylor Athletics. Visit Texas Farm Bureau Insurance online to find a local agent today. Baylor Scott and White Health, the official hospital and healthcare system of Baylor Athletics. Your healthcare, your way. HEB, the official grocer of Baylor Athletics. Proudly serving Texans since 1905. TFNB, the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Premier ER and urgent care. Feel better now. Nissan, innovation for excitement. Here are your hosts, Derek Smith and Elliot Coffey.
Well, a game today that put us through the ringer. Baylor welcoming their first top 15 non-conference opponent to Waco since 2011. And for about 59 minutes or so, the game was right there. But it is Utah scoring late, dominating the fourth quarter, and emerging today with a victory 20-13 over the Bears. Baylor falls to 0-2 on the season. Thanks so much for staying with us today here at McLean Stadium. This is the Postgame Fan Forum. Alongside Elliot Coffey, I'm Derek Smith. If you want to join in the conversation, there's a number of ways you can do so. You can tweet us with the hashtag BUFanForum. You can comment on our Facebook live stream through Baylor Athletics Facebook, or you can visit our live YouTube stream and comment there as well. Heartbreaking in a lot of ways. Elliot, right now the reality is the Baylor football team is 0-2 heading into an 8 with Long Island next week, which is not where we thought we'd be. I think a lot of people might have pegged, if they were picking game by game, this game is a loss. But when Baylor lost to Texas State last week, it put added importance on this game. And you look at it, Baylor improved dramatically from last week. The effort was there. The physicality was there. Baylor got home on defense in a lot of cases. What you couldn't do on a day in which the temperature on the turf were at 150 degrees was not extend drives and put your defense out there over and over again. And unfortunately, that's what happened. I mean, I really think today was a war of attrition in a lot of ways, and you had hoped that Utah, the team from further north in the mountains, would have been the team that the Heat got to. And I'm not saying quite literally that the Heat got to Baylor just so much as they were out there the entire fourth quarter. Utah figured out some things with Nate Johnson, the running quarterback, that added a wrinkle that made it tough. And more than that, the Baylor defense was just out there on the field a long, long time. And you look, it seemed like after Baylor took that 13-3 lead, there was an interception by redshirt freshman Sawyer Robertson. Just seemed like the game changed after that. Whether it was ineffectiveness at times, whether it was more conservatism on the play calling, the game turned there, and it was tough because it still felt like the game was there for the taking for most of it.
You needed to dump that a little bit, didn't you?
I did. Yep.
You just had to let it a little catharsis for it. Just
Sure.
let that dump a little bit. We talked about two major factors before the game. We talked about third down conversion. We talked about time of possession. Part of the reason why that's so important is because those are intertwined factors in the game. If you convert on third down, guess what you have a lot of? Time of possession.
Right.
If you don't convert on third down, 3 and outs lead to your defense spending a lot of time on the field, and then you start to see cracks in the seam. No big boy on the offensive offensive line can kind of dictate the pace of play, but nobody on the defensive line or on the defense for that matter wants to be on the field for 12 minutes and a quarter. Nobody does, especially when it's 150 degrees outside. And so when I look at this game, it's a tale of two halves to me. I think that we came out with a game plan that was effective. We came out with a hunger and a drive that we really expected to see last week that just didn't show up, but one that made us competitive. And ultimately, looking at this football game, did I want us to win? Absolutely. But what I was more focusing on than just winning the football game was how did the game go, right? Did we play the type of football that we expected to play? Did you play complementary football? Offensively, did we get, convert on third downs? Defensively, did we get off the field, right? What are we doing that looks better this week than last week? Penalties. Wanted to see a reduction in the amount of penalties, right? You wanted to see on the defensive side of the ball. You wanted to see us stop the run right up the gut. And for 3 quarters, you saw it. Now, the numbers that stand out to me, and we'll dig into this a little bit later. Derek, third and fourth quarter. How many fourth downs do you think we converted in the third and fourth quarter, the second half?
We converted in the second half. I know it was 0 in the fourth quarter. Was it 1 in the second half? No, it was 0. 0 in the entire second half. So we had the 10-play drive to start it off there, if I'm remembering that correctly. And, in fact, it was a 10-play drive to start it, but there were no third downs there.
There were no third downs. There were no third downs, right? And so that's tough. That's a tough way to live, especially when you look at fourth quarter only, or third quarter only. Utah's 50%, and then in the fourth quarter they were 71% on third down.
Well, do you want to break this down? Because let's look at the stats. Because to your point about this being a tale of two halves,
let's look at it.
The stats don't always tell the story, but in this case, the Cumes definitely do. When you talk about the first half versus the second half, Baylor outscored Utah 10-3. In the first half, was outscored 17-3 in the second half. Baylor outgained Utah 222-153 in the first half.
Yep.
Pretty much you can flip that 224-117 in the second half. And in fact, in the fourth quarter, you're talking about prior to that last desperation drive where you got that long bomb to Hal Presley to set up the final play, which we can talk about.
Sure.
Baylor had 4 fourth quarter yards. 4 fourth quarter yards. You look at, you mentioned penalties. Baylor had 4 in the first half, 1 in the second half. They improved there, but that 1 in the second half, it was big, right? You're talking about that drive in which Baylor is trying to drain the clock and try to walk off with a score. You put your redshirt freshman quarterback Sawyer Robertson in a first and 15 right off the bat. Utah, 14% on third downs in the first half, 1 of 7. 64% in the second half. And again, throw this in mind. When the game started, it was warm, but it wasn't anything we hadn't been used to. But as the game went on, as the temperature crept up near 100, it was about 150 degrees down on the turf.
Derek, I had
Baylor who was out there.
I had to change my polo.
You had to change your polo?
This is not the polo I wore during the pregame or the polo that I wore during the game. It was hot enough to where I was changing clothes.
A smooth operator like you was sweating through it. So.
Exactly. How about that? But it was hot. It was hot, and it was an oppressive heat. And I think, to take this back up to 30,000 feet, there were so many things that we did well, particularly from one week to the next. Now, you talk about Sawyer Robinson coming in relief. We didn't know what the heck we were going to see out of him today. Right, we knew that he needed to control the offense. We knew that we needed to see. Seth talked about this in the pregame show. You're hoping to see some more design runs with his feet to maybe make the defensive line more honest. We saw that. Right, a couple of passes that we thought went really well, but ultimately, as you saw it wear down and the decision started to be made, it's harder when you have to make the right decision over and over and over again, and you're still new to the offense. And so, had a chance to go out there and win this football game. Absolutely did everything that we could in the first half. It just got difficult once you saw the ball come out of his hand. And here's one thing that I really expected to see, and this is something you and I talked about earlier, is anytime you have a young quarterback, you need to make it easy for him. You need to figure out what that release valve, that check down is. If you looked at that game on Thursday night with the Kansas City Chiefs, right, Patrick Mahomes is one of the most prolific passers in NFL history. His safety valve was a guy named Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce didn't
play.
What did that do to his game?
Totally changed. He's having to make big plays to Kadarius Toney.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it just completely took that safety valve, that ease out of him. And what I saw really in that second half there is that we had a couple of injuries, a couple of things got nicked up. When I was looking for that safety valve, I was trying to figure out, how do we dumb this game down? How do we make it easier on that quarterback? I couldn't figure out where it was. If I couldn't figure out where it was from my press box with air conditioning, my Mountain Dew in my hand, it's going to be that much harder for him with the 150 degrees and 40,000 fans screaming, 50,000 fans screaming at him, doing so. And so I'll let you take
I was
it.
going to say, to your point there, Elliot, we will appreciate people already commenting on our YouTube stream and on Facebook. And Charlie had a comment that he said, give me y'all's thoughts on the offensive play calling. He said, I'm not a coach, but from my perspective, it seemed too conservative. I think that to what you're saying there is we tie that in a little bit. You said you weren't figuring out what they were what was making the game easier for Sawyer Robertson, what was putting him in position to make easier throws. He was 12 for 28 on the 12 for 28 on the game for 218 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 picks. You know what he looked like? He looked like a talented young quarterback making the first start of his career against a really good defense. That's what he looked like. And that's fine. And that's fine. And honestly, that was almost enough to win the game today. We don't have the numbers in front of us, but what percentage of those 28 passes would you guess were over 10 yards, were over 15 yards?
Not a ton. Yeah. Not a ton. I mean, I think. Well, I say that. There was a couple that he took over the top that I think if he had some more time one-on-one with those receivers, are caught in first downs, if not more. Right? Should be 6.
So to the point, they weren't just putting him in position to try to stretch him down a lot.
Right.
But also, how many of those do you think were easy rhythm
I was going to say, that's probably more my question. I don't know necessarily between 10 and 15. As far as easy throws to get you in rhythm, that's what we were missing. And that's, I think, what you expect to see with a young quarterback that's still picking up his rhythm. I mean, there was a couple of passes. You see some to Hal Presley, some to Keytron Jackson, right along the sideline where the timing was just off. And that's expected, right? He just got here. He wasn't expected to be the starter at this point, right? He's a redshirt freshman. He's going to make mistakes. Everybody expects that, right? What you need to do in a quarterback in that situation is get the ball out of his hand. Make it as easy, and that's what we're talking about, ease. We're talking about safety valve. We're talking about quick game, getting the ball out of his hand, and that's one of the things, particularly as the run game starts to fall apart a little bit. Guess what? A 3 or 4 yard quick pass to a slot receiver is the same it's the same mindset as going out and running the football. And so when we're struggling with running the football right down the middle, or we're struggling with that wide zone, guess what you can do? You can spread that ball, just dump it right to that slot receiver. The safety's playing 7 yards over top, or the linebacker's playing 7 yards deep off of him. Guess what happens when you throw that wide pass to the slot? You got to run to the football, right? What does that do? That tires those big boys out. They're from Utah. Right? So if you're not running the ball, which guess what? It's a lot easier when you're running inside zone or where you're running that wide zone because they're kind of downhill there, right? It's like all right, quick read, downhill. But when you spread it wide, then they're running back and forth, and then you hit them up the gut, and it's 150 degrees down there. That really opens that up, and that takes some of that responsibility off of Sawyer and his processing speed to say, okay, all right, this didn't work. All of a sudden, it's all on me. It's 3rd and 8. Right, the run didn't work the way he wanted to. I got to find a way to weave this, thread this needle right here. And so that's what I wanted to see is just get the ball out of his hand quickly, take the cheap yards, and then implement your offense into that. That's what I was thinking.
Well, and I appreciate it because a lot of comments on Facebook as well. They're asking about the play calling, and I think it's easy to use a phrase like conservative. Like it's another thing to kind of say, well, what are some things you would like to see? And I think that describes it. That describes it well. And again, I think Sawyer, again, Utah has a very physical defense, which, by the way, we'll talk more. Our defense, in a lot of cases, gave as good as it got today, if not better. But against a very physical defense and a tough defense, Sawyer Robertson did enough to give you a chance to win. There were 2 bad picks, and look, there's not moral victories. Those happen in the game. I think you look and say, with more experience, Sawyer Robertson is going to make a better decision than he did in those instances, and it definitely seemed like after that first pick, the game changed just a little bit. Again, Sawyer Robertson, 12 of 28 today for 218 yards, 2 picks on the ground, 5 carries for 19 yards and a touchdown. And again, I thought, then you talked about the running game a little bit there in the second half. Utah got stronger as the game went on. It felt like once they got a couple of 3-and-outs in the second half, they just kind of were able to pin back and play a little more loose than maybe they were in the first half, and they kept putting Baylor in 2nd and long, 3rd and long, and that's exactly where, as we talked about last week, the playbook shrinks. You want the full playbook for a young quarterback, and then so if we're saying that the runs weren't working, maybe you tie into what you just said again, is that short passing game there to just to be a new wrinkle, a different wrinkle, a different look for them to think about, because it just felt like Utah was able defensively to play pretty much what they wanted to there in the second half. And I mean, you look again in the fourth quarter, Baylor only ran 9 plays in the fourth quarter, and Utah, of course, was able to come back and win the game in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the part of the swing passes or the quick, not even swing passes, the part of the quick game is that it's going to keep people honest, right? When we really struggled was when they started loading the box and just bringing pressure. It's the same thing we saw last week against Texas State, right? Load the box, bring a ton of pressure, bring a ton of heat, right? Because once you don't make yourself a two-dimensional team, they don't have to stay honest and say, okay, if this is play action, he dumps one over the top, it's going to hurt us, right? They just load the box and they bring it. You saw that last week. You see it this week. You're probably going to see it for the rest of the season until you can do something, which is as simple as a quick game, to get them on their heels, right? To make them think twice. Because defensively, if you're playing an offense, or if I'm on defense, and I have an offense that shows me a look, I have a pre-snap read based off the research that I've done, the film that I've watched on them, and tendencies that team has, right? I'm running all this stuff pre-snap to try to figure out, hey, based off of down and distance, based off of where you are on the field, based off of personnel, what are they likely going to run, right? If you can just throw something else out at me, right? I'm prepared for X play to come at me, right? That play doesn't run, and then you run something else. Guess what? Next time you line up in that same thing, I'm going to say that tendency, but I'm in the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, they ran something else next time. So maybe I'm a little bit slower, right? That split second means a ton out on their field. And so that's what looking at our offense, I think for what Sawyer did today, outside of those two interceptions that he threw. And here's the thing, Derek, I've been talking about this for the last 2 weeks. If we make mistakes, make them 100 miles an hour. Sawyer's trying to make a play. My hope is that he's eventually going to play a lot of snaps of football for us. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we're really going to look back at that 2023 Utah game and hold it against him. Right?
Right.
I think this is one of those games where you say he went out there, he played lights out, he scrambled for his first touchdown, he put us in a position to win that game there late in the fourth quarter, right? Came down to a pass interference that didn't get called on Keytron in the corner, right? There's a lot of things that happen in this game today where I look and say, man, there's a bright future for that kid.
There is.
So I refuse to slander him in the slightest in terms of how he played today. But I do think there's opportunities to put him in a better position to be successful, especially if he's struggling with those they're intermediate to longer passes.
Two things worth noting. In the postgame interview with John Morris, Coach Aranda said that Sawyer Robertson rolled his ankle in the second half. That's worth noting. It played an impact on the play calling. Another thing is, and again, we acknowledge this. We're going to acknowledge this. It wasn't the ball game, but Kirby says commented, and certainly a lot of people were mad at the end of the ball game on once Baylor had that bomb to Hal Presley. They reviewed, said we had one play left, right? 1 second left from the 22-yard line. Keytron Jackson was interfered with. He was interfered.
It was 100% a pass interference.
It was 100% a pass
interference. Yeah, it's not a question. It's a statement.
You're setting them up. You're setting us up at the 2-yard line with a chance to tie the game or maybe even go for 2 and win it. I'm not going to blame the game on that. You would have liked to have had it called and had that chance. And, maybe if that is called and we tie it up and go to overtime, we're talking about things completely differently, right? But it was not, and so we cannot. But we'll acknowledge that. That was a pass interference, and we wish it had been called. What percentage of time, even at home, do you think officials are going to call that on the last play of the game from they're 22 yards out? I
mean, if we're in Tuscaloosa, maybe you get that home call because they know that that's a long ride to the airport getting out of town from there.
Sure.
But, no, I don't you don't really want it to come to that. I think is maybe the overwhelming thought in my head here is that we had opportunities out there to where it should not have come to a pass interference at the end. Was it a pass interference? Yes, 100% pass interference. If that would have happened the drive before, it would have been a pass interference. Any other drive that entire game, but that play right there, 1 second on the clock, not a pass interference. Because here's what happens. You get half the distance to the goal, you get an untimed down, you go out there and win it, and all of a sudden those refs don't get whatever, right? But my hope is that we don't ever get in a situation again where we're looking into the end zone waiting for a pass interference to get us another down, right? That's just ultimately what I think we don't want. But, it was a pass interference. It was a bad call.
Okay, let's switch gears a little bit now. Let's talk about the job that the defense did today. And ultimately, ultimately it kind of feels like it falls flat in the moment in a loss, and in a loss in which, again, Utah scores late to win the game. They score an 11-yard Jalen Glover touchdown run with 17 seconds left, capping off 2 touchdown drives in the final 2 minutes.
Can we pause there real quick?
But, yes, please.
Why didn't that running back take a knee on the 1 yard line? and let the clock run out?
I don't know.
How many times when they scored with a minute and 20 on the clock, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, why would you give us a minute and 20 to get the ball back?
And ultimately, I hate to say that
Holding call.
That penalty helped them.
It saved them.
It saved them.
But let's just take this. Nick Chubb did a couple years, or I think last year for Cleveland.
Remember going back to way back, Ahmad Bradshaw at the last minute
Exactly.
of the Super Bowl realized,
Exactly.
oh shoot, I should take a knee, but he fell into the end zone.
Yeah, he fell into the end zone, right? Exactly. But my thing is, if any players are listening that could potentially be in this situation down the road, take that knee, let the clock run out, and kick the field goal. Ultimately, it didn't hurt them today, but if they wouldn't have got away with that pass interference right there, there's a chance this game goes into overtime, and everybody's looking at what happened. Should have taken that knee and kicked that field goal. Or at least taking the knee, run it a couple more times, run it down to 1 second, and then score on that, right? I just think there's
no, for sure. Well, in fact, Mike Smith pushed him into the end zone. Mike Smith, to help his team,
Mike was like,
pushed him
get
into
in
the
there.
end zone.
And there should have been 18 seconds on the clock, but there was 17. Not to say that 1 second mattered, but ultimately it did matter.
Yeah, it almost
did.
almost really did for sure. But man, the defense, they brought it today. They brought it. They were physical. They whooped them a few times. There were several plays that looked like a WWE suplex from Matt Jones, from Mike Smith. They were physical. They brought it. And again, this is a team that last week, they ultimately ended up with 20 points. Most of them came late.
Right.
You're talking about a Utah team that Baylor had held to 6 points.
They made that
through
offense.
the first 48 minutes of the ball game.
Listen, I think we're a couple first downs away from them not scoring anything more than that. I mean, I think they may at times those quarterbacks are going to have issues down the road, but we made them look pedestrian. And last week against Florida, they looked like Vince Young out there, both of them, right? You had Johnny Unitas throwing the ball, and then you had Vince Young out there running it, right? It looked completely different. But yeah, I mean, defensively, what I was so impressed with wasn't just flying around, right? I wanted that. We wanted that. We talked about it last week. We wanted to see motors from the defense. You saw the motors, but you saw the violence, right? You saw them out there. You saw them hitting. You saw the gang tackles. But what I was really impressed with too, how many times did we bat the ball down?
A lot.
Man, do you know how soul crushing that is for a receiver to go out there and run these long routes and all of a sudden the ball gets batted down? How much pressure should we have? Or how many
7 pass breakups.
7.
Let's look at these numbers here. 7 pass breakups, 3 sacks, 1 interception, and 3 quarterback hurries. Those are good numbers. Those are good numbers. I mean, and again, you took Utah really out of their game. I think late in the game when Baylor was worn down, that's when they were able to insert Nate Johnson in just to stay out there on the field. Yeah. And his running ability was a wrinkle that made a difference. But maybe it's not if we stay on the field a little bit longer.
Yeah. And here's the tough thing about a running quarterback is that you've got a hat on a hat. Essentially what that means is if you've got 5 down linemen, right, you've got 5 offensive linemen, you got 4 defensive linemen. Right, you got 1 linebacker in the box. That's a hat on a hat. You've got a running back that's a lead blocker for the second linebacker. Right, so every defensive lineman has somebody on them. Both linebackers have somebody on them, and then you've got the quarterback, which means that either one of those down linemen, one of those 6 that are in the box, has to win one-on-one and then make a tackle, or you got to have somebody from the second level come in and make the tackle, which typically means unless you get a really good push up front, it's a guaranteed 2 or 3 yards. That's what we were with Gary 2 years ago. Yeah. Right, we put a hat on a hat. We run a quarterback power. Heck, we scored a touchdown on a quarterback power or quarterback wide zone. Right?
How many times was it 2nd and 6 or 3rd and 3,
and
3rd and 2?
And you're just loading it up. Yeah. And it's like we talk so much about what Abram did for that offense in terms of running, but having a quarterback back there that could run too and drop a shoulder on somebody, it's just hard to cover. Right? And you saw them realize, hey, look, at this point, he's just another running back. Right? He can throw the ball a little bit. And you saw some success that he had on some of those deep in routes that you saw, right? Those dig routes.
Yeah.
But other than that, he really ran the football.
He did, and you look, again, it may be the defense is more effective if they're not out there so much in the second half. After that field goal to start the second half by the Bears, 10-play drive, the drives went 1 play, 3 plays, 3 plays, 3 plays, 3 plays. None of them lasted over 2 minutes. Meanwhile, in the second half, none of Utah's drives lasted less than 3 minutes. In fact, all but 2 were over 5 minutes. And we'll save that. Well, we won't count that minute 18 drive that led to the game-winning touchdown. Obviously, with that interception that Baylor threw with under 2 minutes to go, that's not a long drive situation. That's just bleed the clock and try to score as late as you can. Which they did. By the way, we talk about play call. I thought Baylor dialed up some really good play calls. Matthew Palligan is just the second ever game he's called defensively. It really felt like obviously he's got to study and see where they can improve, and it just felt like he did. What did you see as a defensive guy?
Yeah, he dialed up. So that's one of the things that he did so well a couple years back when he was here is you saw the pressures, right? And the pressures didn't just come from 4-down linemen. You saw pressures come from safeties. You saw pressures come from the star position. You saw pressures come from the linebackers. And you saw us today, you saw us get home. And that's really what I wanted to see is, we were in positions to make plays last week. We just didn't make them. And so I felt like we brought a ton of pressure. We brought different looks. We brought them from different people. And I think it really at times confused that Utah offensive line because that's a big, talented offensive line. But at times they were seeing ghosts out there. And the boys, like I said, not only did they bring pressure, but when they got there, they brought force. Right? A couple times they slipped away from us. A couple times they had good runs. But guess what? That's a good football team on the other side of the field. They're going to do that. They're out there because they break tackles. Right? That's why they play for Utah, number 14, number 12 team in the country. And so I thought that we played winning football. Right? We put ourselves in a position to win there. And I thought that with the different looks that we showed, we will show to be incredibly competitive for the rest of the season. Something we just didn't see last week. Something I was worried about. Remember, we talked about this. I was concerned last week with the struggles that we had on the defensive side of the ball. Was it personnel? Was it scheme? Right? Was it the fact that – and I think now we've proven that if we've got an idea who the personnel are, right? We had 53 new people last week. If we've got film, which Whittingham's been there for 19 seasons, right? I think we got a lot of film. Yeah. I think they were prepared. And so they could go out there. I think they drew up an incredible game plan. And you can tell this week in practice that – they ran a lot, because they were flying around to the ball today.
They were, and you know what else? And if you're looking for some signs of hope, and I mean, look, 0-2 really stinks, and honestly, you can't change that record. The record is what it is right now. If you play better last week, you're 1-1, and you're right where everyone thought you'd be. But that's not the case. Long Island is going to be an opportunity to try to build on this, get a win. Hopefully set some tendencies that'll carry you some good spots against UT here in a couple weeks. Here's one other point. Baylor played well today against the nation's number 12 team. They're probably going to play in a lot of games in the Big 12 like this.
Yeah.
If Sawyer Robertson is healthy, if Blake Shapen's healthy, if Sawyer has more experience, maybe that looks different. And, again, we've seen Baylor learn from mistakes. Our man Dave Shook commented in. He commented in with the hashtag BUFanForum. He said, love you, Dave, by the way.
Yeah,
Dave. He said, play not to lose only gets you beat. I think we'll see some different wrinkles next week in tight games if we're in that situation. He says, tough one to swallow with UT looming in 2 weeks, and that's definitely the case. Next week is Long Island. It's really not a good idea to look 2 weeks, 2 weeks in the future, but I'll say one thing on that game. Baylor plays like they did today. They'll have a chance it'll play a little bit better. They'll have a chance in that game. You win that game, first week in Big 12 play, you are tied for first place in the conference. So that's going to be what really, really matters. So, right, you build on today, play well next week, and hopefully learn from the areas that you fell short in today. I think we covered a lot. We covered a lot of ground here in the first segment. We want to make sure we do that as people are driving home. Hopefully a little something to hang on to as you're headed back. But if you want to join in the conversation, and we appreciate those of you who are. You can comment on the Baylor Athletics Facebook stream. We're on Facebook Live right now. You can comment on YouTube, or you can tweet us with the hashtag BUFanForum, as Dave did, and we appreciate that. Tough one today. Baylor falls 20-13 to 12th ranked Utah. Coming up next, we'll have Rewind. We'll listen to a few of the big calls from this game with the voice of the Bears, John Morris. A little bit later on, we will, of course, have Coffey is for closers. We'll also take a look around the Big 12 a little bit later on. And a preview of a future Big 12 rivalry, Baylor and Utah today. It was Utah coming to Waco and emerging with the victory, 20-13. Again, a touchdown run with 17 seconds left won the game for the Utes. This is the Baylor Sports Media Network. We'll take a timeout. Alongside Elliot Coffey, I'm Derek Smith, and we'll rejoin you in a moment from McLean Stadium here on the Baylor Sports Media Network.
Jeff Haas Mazda and the Baylor Bears both
I'll be back.
needs to be number one. Hard work, determination, commitment. The number one Mazda dealer in Texas, Jeff Haas Mazda, is inviting all the Baylor Bear fans listening to visit us for hard-hitting deals on every new Mazda in stock, with fresh inventory hitting the ground daily. And every new Mazda comes with our Jeff Haas Advantage plan. Plus, your trade is now worth more than ever. We're buying all makes and models. Get our best cash offer in minutes. Jeff Haas Mazda on the Katy Freeway.
Number one based on 2021 sales and stock volume in the Gulf region.
For a limited time, get high-performance, ultra-reliable internet from Astound Broadband, starting as low as $25 per month. And now we have mobile, too. Visit astound.com to order the #1 rated internet. Create the perfect plan with fast speeds to meet all your needs, plus get a 2-year price lock when you upgrade to award-winning gig internet. No contracts, no hidden monthly fees, and no data caps. Switch today. Head to astound.com or call 1-800-4ASTOUND. Restrictions apply. See website for details.
Premier ER and Urgent Care has all the convenience of urgent care with all the expertise of an ER, all under one roof. At every visit, be seen by ER-trained staff with on-site lab and CT, X-ray, ultrasound, and EKG. Here, you pay for the appropriate level of care that you receive, and we are in-network with most major insurance providers. Premier ER and Urgent Care has 4 convenient locations serving Texas: San Marcos, Temple, Waco, and Woodway. To learn more, visit www.premier.care.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
We're breaking down today's game on the Fan Forum. To join in the conversation, tweet your thoughts with hashtag #BUFanForum or leave your comments on the YouTube or Facebook live streams. Now, back to Derek and Elliot.
That's the way to do it, and a lot of you are commenting. I think a lot of people are, as we've talked about earlier, were pleased with the way the defense played overall, frustrated with some of the play calling as of late. And again, we learned after the game Sawyer Robertson was dealing with an ankle injury sustained in the game that had an impact. A couple comments that make it clear that I think people's feelings on this game are certainly impacted by the Texas State game. Again, I think if you're 1-1, it looks a lot different. It feels a lot different today. I think if Baylor beats Texas State last week, you're like, well, shoot, you're talking about this, Elliot, earlier, with our backup quarterback against the nation's number 12 team. We almost got it done. Disappointing that we couldn't, but because the team's 0-2 instead of 1-1, it stings a whole lot more. I tell you what, though, if they can bring that physicality week in, week out, we know there's going to be a lot of close games in the Big 12. That kind of physicality is going to win you some ball games defensively.
It does. And here's something that let's just go back to the defense for a second. On top of the fact that the defense played really well, the defense played with a couple new faces.
They did.
Right? We had some
No
injuries.
Garmin.
No Garmin.
Lemire.
No Lemire's, right? But you look across the board. I mean, you saw big plays, and sometimes these don't necessarily show up on the stat sheet. But I think of a guy, Cade Jenkins, corner, number 19. Big play, out in coverage. Matt Jones, a guy that is moved back off the line of scrimmage, got him playing inside linebacker. Pass breakups.
Yeah.
Right? Coming in blitzes, different looks.
DJ Coleman had a couple of those.
Exactly. And then somebody that we're seeing on the stat sheet finally, Mike Smith, right? 8 tackles, 5 solo. These numbers aren't going to be huge when you have somebody on a 20-13 game. Right, in a 2013 game, you had a total of, it ended up getting pretty high, 73 plays for Utah and 57 for Baylor. And so you're just not going to see a ton of tackles, but you saw a lot of individual performances. I mean, I look at a guy like Gabe Hall. Once again, I don't know how he looks necessarily on the stat sheet here.
1.5 tackles for loss, quarterback hurry.
Right, but here's somebody I really need to talk about is TJ Franklin, right? That's a guy that I put a lot of pressure on I expect a lot out of him. He's a big body. He's been around for a while. He's somebody that should understand the scheme at this point. He has 4 years in this system, right? He should understand exactly where to be and how to be there. Look at those stats.
2 tackles for loss.
And a sack.
And
that was a really big sack that he had, too. And so, you saw the production out of the guys that you needed to show up, right? We mentioned this on the pregame show today. There's only a couple guys on that defense, Matt Jones, TJ Franklin, right? There's a couple of people that you expect to show up and really Gabe Hall, like I said, lead the way because they've been around for a little bit. A lot of new faces back there.
Well, and we talked about the defensive line. I mean, that was the offensive and defensive lines were in the doghouse last week on Coffey as for closers.
Yes, they were.
And you look at Utah in the first half had 153 yards on 17 carries, which is a good number. but you throw in that they had a 44-yard run. You know, Baylor wasn't giving them big yardage most plays. It was really in the second half that Utah was able to consistently go to the ground. They had 17 rushes in the first half, 30 in the second half, and they were just kind of able to bleed the clock, put Baylor in third and shorts in a lot of cases, and they picked up a number of those. In fact, they were 7 for 11 on third downs in the second half. The defensive line came to play today, and you're right. It was T.J. Franklin, who you were noticing in a positive way in a lot of those situations as it went on. But so you had a veteran like T.J. Franklin, Gabe Hall. They stepped up today. One thing that encourages me as we think about this defense, Matt Jones being another one, right? Those are the three big veterans.
He took big steps today.
He did. 2 pass breakups, 9 tackles, and he's not listed as any tackles for loss. But I tell you what, a couple of those hits he put on they probably were a 0 or 1 yard, right?
Right.
I don't know what this defense's ceiling is. Over the course of this year, but when you look at these names that we're seeing on here among the top 10. Top 10 tackles on the game. Mike Smith, transfer from Liberty. Corey Gordon, young guy. But Devin Bobby, second-year guy. DJ Coleman, whose name we've never really called before. Today he finished with 6 tackles and a pass breakup. You mentioned Caden Jenkins. We've noticed him positively these last 2 weeks. Young guy, Cooper Land. Kyler Jordan leaped up and he just hawked that interception.
Oh, man.
He hawked that interception. Chateau Reed stepped up. Iron Vaughn's a transfer from Utah State. There's a lot of guys whose names we haven't called a lot, but who seemingly their arrow is pointing up. And I don't know what this defense can ultimately be, but I think you look at what you have here, these names we're saying, and I don't know what the ceiling is. And that's going to be fun to see. If they can bring the effort that they brought today and play with that kind of intensity, I mean, there's going to be you're going to give up points in the Big 12, but that's a defense that looks like they can win you games in conference.
No, I think they are, and that's all I really wanted to see is, hey, was Texas State an anomaly? Was that a one-off where maybe we just didn't show up? Maybe there were some calls that were being made. There were some things that, maybe we tried to overextend ourselves with certain looks, and in reality, we just needed to kind of simplify what we're going to run out there. Or was it a personnel thing, right? Or are there people out there that maybe just can't, are having a hard time and maybe just can't, hold the line the way that
I think a lot of people were wondering that this week, right?
That was, to try to put it as delicately as possible. If you line me up at defensive tackle, Derek, I'm probably not going to be the guy for you, right? No matter how much of a good of a guy it may or may not be. But I think you saw that you can put them up against a pretty dang good offensive line, and they can go out there and they can compete. And better yet, they can have a lot of success. And so the other thing that I wanted to talk about as we look at some of the differences from last week to this week is let's talk about penalties, right? We still had 4.
Much better than last week, though. They cut it in more than half.
Less than half of what we had last week.
9 last week.
Less than half of what we had last week. Now, the tough thing about the timing of these.
Not great.
2nd and 7, 2nd and 11, 3rd and 16, right? And then one came on 1st and 10. That's just tough, right? When we talk about what this play or what this offense wants to look like, what we want to run on 1st and 2nd down, like I said, the closer we are to 2nd, and I would even say 2nd and 6, the more open this playbook is, right? The more options that we have because we're less one-dimensional, right? Because here's the thing. If we try not to be one-dimensional, right? If you try to run the ball on 2nd and 10, you don't get any yardage, guess when you're absolutely one-dimensional?
Right.
On 3rd down, right? And so trying to figure out, hey, based off of whether it's penalties, whether it's field position, how we can give looks to where we can just have that, like I said, that split-second edge, is what we're trying to do. And so greatly reduced the amount of penalties that we had. That was really refreshing. The one face mask that we had, which was the 5th penalty we had on the day, that was a tough one.
That was a tough one. That took us out of, took us from 2nd and 5 potentially to 1st down and 25, and we had to settle for a field goal in the red zone. That hurt. And then I thought late that false start when we had the ball with just under 2 minutes to go and a chance to try to ice the clock and walk off with a score. Obviously, that made it 1st and 15, and I think that gave Utah a little bit of juice there, a little bit of extra energy after they'd already had plenty of energy.
Yeah, don't need to give them anything that they don't need. By the way, it's on Gavin Byers. He's the only offensive lineman that we returned on that line from last year. You got to be the guy that doesn't jump in that situation, but that's okay. Now, what I do want to talk about, since we're talking about how many we had on offense, how many do you think we had on defense? Think of one.
I don't remember any.
Because there weren't any.
Yeah.
No penalties on defense today.
That's
no
fantastic.
Holding, no. Think about how many times we were in coverage. Think about how many times we brought pressure. Think about how many times we hit the quarterback. no face masks, no defensive pass interference, no holding calls, no roughing the passers. Man, that is
that's sound.
Heck of a sound football game by that defense, man. As you start to kind of piece together, hey, we're kind of seeing these undertones of them playing really well. We noticed that they were flying around. They were disciplined, man. That was a disciplined defense. And so very, very impressed by what they did out there today.
You know, I think if you, again, you know, we're talking about, you know, it's disappointing that the team's 0-2, but obviously there's 10 more games to go and games that count for where you really want to be at the end of the year still to come. I think if you want some signs of hope, like do some studying up on Corey Gordon. Or, you know, Corey Gordon is one name we've talked about. DJ Coleman, Caden Jenkins. Like, these are some names that I think we're going to be saying a lot more as the year goes on. The hopeful positive is that you weather some of these growing pains early. Last week was a growing pain for the defense, and it was a rather unpleasant one. But maybe sometimes you just got to get through those. Again, I think the defense's ceiling, we don't really know what it could be, but they're showing an ability to learn quickly. How much do you like that when you've got a lot of redshirt freshmen, some true freshmen in there who prove to be quick studies?
Yeah. Man, this is a young football team. Not only from the personnel, because you have a couple guys on the lines that are a little bit older, but just a team that hasn't played a lot of snaps together, a lot of new guys, right? But also a lot of young guys. And a lot of those mistakes that we're seeing out there, there's this immense pressure, particularly because of the 2019 team that went to the Big 12 championship, the 2021 team that won a Sugar Bowl.
It's the odd-numbered year, so it's our birthright, right?
It's our birthright, right? 10 win, double-digit wins, right? Hopefully this isn't another 2017 with no double-digit wins. I think we're going to have double-digit wins. I think this is a team that's piecing it together. But you're seeing it real time, right? You're seeing it real time. These kinks that we have to work out, some of these mistakes that we're making as Sawyer goes out there and he's trying to figure out, he's trying to make a play. He can kind of see it, but he's not all the way there yet. Right, he just started this, right, Derek? If you or I was out here and we had to show how good we were at whatever job we did when we first started out, 9 months in, and you put us out there with people that had done it for, if you're Bryson Jackson, 7 years,
right? Well, yeah,
right. There's some things that you're gonna do way better 3 years from now than you're doing right now, but we're seeing things in their infancy, and so. Even with all those mistakes, did it end up costing us the game? Yes, but we stayed competitive. And these are things that we can learn from. And the old adage is you get, that biggest leap you make is from week 1 to week 2. Well, week 1 team was very concerning to me. Week 2, the mistakes we made, we can work on those, right?
Sure.
We could identify the mistakes that we made. There's things like the false starts, killing the drives. There's things like a missed field goal that you can work on, right? There's things like high pointing the football. There's timing with some of these routes. There's a couple times where Sawyer just missed those. That's just reps. Right, you just got to go out there and rep that thing out. It's like hitting a golf ball.
It's not something I'm very good at, by the way, but I follow what you're saying there here on the Postgame Fan Forum. Again, if you want to join in the conversation, #BUFanForum, or you can comment on the Baylor Athletics Facebook Live page or on our YouTube stream. And I'll say this, but they didn't have to go up against Cam Rising. If you could go back and change a few dominoes, if Cam Rising doesn't get hurt in the Rose Bowl, if he's able to start, maybe the defense doesn't look quite as good today. But you know what? They're learning, they're growing. I'm kind of glad they had that opportunity today to go up against Utah's backups. And, as time goes on, as you get into Big 12, you just kind of keep elevating, right? You keep elevating the challenge that is in front of you.
I almost played a ridiculous what-if with you, and I'm not even going to do it. But, yeah, there's a whole lot of what-ifs. I think if Cam Rising was out there, depending on how healthy he is, because that's the other piece, too, is coming back from an ACL injury is tough, right? From trusting your body to what are my new limitations, what's my new 100%. But those quarterbacks, like I said, they looked really impressive last week, and they looked fairly pedestrian up until the end of the fourth quarter here today. I mean, if you look at just the scoring drives that we had here today from Utah, right? Let me just going to pull up these drives real quick. We'll take a look at this. Utah in the first half. First drive, punt. Second drive, punt. Third drive, interception. Fourth drive, field goal. Fifth drive, punt. Halftime, punt, field goal. Turnover on downs. That was how it went. It wasn't until the last 2 drives of the game, one of which came off of a turnover that was already putting them in field goal position after a
interception,
right? After an interception off of a 24-second drive by Baylor, right? That's just that's serendipitous for them, man. Sometimes the cookie crumbles in your direction. Right?
Well, to talk about that offensive-defense correlation, the defense gave up 10 points in the second half on drives where Utah basically only needed a first down, right?
Man.
They only needed a first down.
That's right. I mean, you have that second-to-last drive by them, 15-play, 88-yard drive, 8 minutes. That's tough.
That's tough.
That's tough, man. But they were bound to have that drive this game. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that they had an 88-yard, 8-minute drive.
Yeah.
If you told me and I had to put where it was going to happen in the game, I wouldn't know it. But if you told me there was going to be one, I'd 1,000% believe you. Right? That's the type of football that they play. That's totally okay. Now, the turnover leading them to a 6-play, 29-yard drive and a minute and 18.
Yeah.
That's
they got a field goal in which they went 9 yards in 7 plays. The defense held. The defense did what you needed them to do. They held them to a field goal, but
they still took.
That's 3 points, and they mattered.
And they still took 4 minutes off the clock in that drive, right? And so that's really the difference right there. And it didn't matter if it was Baylor or if it was Utah. Whoever really at the end of that third quarter was able to control the time of possession was the one that was going to walk away with the game. That's why I said
you said that
third
in the
down
pregame show.
Conversion and time of possession, right?
Whoever's defense is out on the field, you said that. Defense out on the field the longest
right.
is going to be the team that loses the football game. Time of possession. Utah had it 36-17. Baylor had it 23-43.
Yeah, and I think even if you look at the end of the first half, first half only, time of possession was actually in Baylor's favor. 14-40 Utah, 15-20 Baylor.
Second half was a bit of an avalanche.
Second half was a bit of an avalanche, right? Second half only 21 minutes to Utah, 8 minutes to Baylor.
Yeah.
Right, it's almost 3 times.
That was the game. That was
the game, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of offense that we want to run. Right, that's our game. That's what we did to people is we'd suffocate them. It's death by 1,000 cuts, right? To the point where you look up and you're like, I didn't feel any of those cuts, but now I'm bleeding out, kind of situation, right? And once again, I mean, these are all things that we can fix, right? It was decision making. It was just the lack of comfort. It was a little bit of an injury leading to some certain decisions that we made. It was defensively, you're gonna wear down. I mean, I've played snaps. I mean, it was only 73 snaps. I never played in a game where it's 150 degrees on the field. I can tell you that. But I played in games where I'm up in the 80, 90, 100 snaps a game, and you just aren't the same player after like 60 snaps that you are before it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it's going to get really hard. And so, defense, I thought, all things considered, just still found a way to continue to push, continue to fight, kept us in the game, gave us an opportunity to win that football game, particularly as well as they played. Like I said, looking at that first half all the way through basically the end of the second half, they didn't score touchdowns.
Right.
It went to the last 2 drives of the game.
Minute 59 left in the game. That was when they first reached the end zone.
And I still think that, if they don't get that interception on their own 35 or on our own 35, that they still would have struggled to score that. That's just a tough place because on the other hand, you start thinking to it like, all right, well, let's let them score. We got a minute and 20 seconds on the clock or whatever it is. Maybe we can march it down. So.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing, right? You look at that time, that penalty, the defense was just too gassed to take advantage of it. That penalty that wiped a touchdown off the board with a minute 20 ended up being a gift to Utah that Baylor couldn't take advantage of. Hey, we promised you some highlights from this game on Rewind. Felt like talking defense was a little more important here. This segment, we're going to push that to our next segment when we return. Fans, want to let you know the Baylor Coaches Show presented by Rudy's has returned. Next show at its new time, 7 to 8 p.m. at Rudy's Barbecue. It'll be Wednesday, September 14th with cross-country coach David Barnett and head football coach Dave Aranda. Submit your questions for the next Baylor Coaches Show to the First Place Foods inbox by tweeting @VoiceOfBears. Again, tweet @VoiceOfBears. First Place Foods, that's a darn good pickle. Alongside Elliot Coffey, I'm Derek Smith. Appreciate those of you joining in the conversation on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter with the hashtag BUFanForum. Rewind is coming up next. We'll hear the calls of a few big plays with the voice of the Bears, John Morris, when we're back after this. Baylor falls today 20-13 to 12th ranked Utah, looking to bounce back next week against Long Island. We'll be back after this here on the Baylor Sports Media Network.
Texas Golf Carts has been providing sales, service, and leasing to Central Texas since 1993. We offer many different parts and accessories from various manufacturers and are the only authorized Yamaha and Club Car dealer in Central Texas. Visit our new location off Highway 6 in Waco or call us at 848-5991 and let us know what you are looking for, and we'll provide the expertise in meeting and achieving your desires and specifications. We are also proud supporters of the Baylor Bears. Sick 'em, Bears.
No matter which road you take, the Toyota Tundra is the perfect way to navigate it. On your path, you're your own boss and set your own hours.
Look at that sunrise.
You may find yourself in some pretty remote places.
Whoa, that view. It's amazing.
Or in places where pastimes become stories that become legends.
I got one. It's a keeper. Hey, get a picture. No one's going to believe this.
And each day ends binge-watching stars and dreaming about all the things you'll do the next day.
You know what? I'm catching a bigger fish tomorrow.
Built to follow your path, the Toyota Tundra. This Texan knows how to sick 'em. Toyota is a proud partner of Baylor Athletics. Visit your local Toyota dealer or Toyota.com to check out the rugged Tundra today. Toyota, let's go places. See packages and options at Toyota.com for feature availability.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Look, there's going to be some games where you look like a young defense, but I just...
It's time for Coffee is for Closers. The car, the steak knives, the...
Okay, this is just the order they're in.
Oh, sorry.
Hashtag.
For next break, too.
Or comment on YouTube or Facebook Live.
Actually, going to hold off on Coffee is for Closers for one more segment, but Elliot, well, let's let people know that we got a lot of people joining in on the YouTube channel right now. We've got quite a few people joining in as well on Facebook. Coffee is for Closers. Who is the top performer, the second best performer, or unit, individual or unit, and what would you put in the doghouse today? If you want to comment on Instagram, I'm not on Instagram, on Facebook rather, YouTube or Twitter, we would love your comments today. But it is time now for Rewind. We're going to listen back to some of the big plays in this game and look back at how the game unfolded. This was a scoreless game heading into the second quarter, which I don't know if anyone necessarily had that predicted today, but it was Baylor who entered the scoreboard first. Isaiah Hankins hit a 34-yard field goal that got Baylor on the board.
It would be officially a 34-yard attempt. The left-footed Hankins. Wow, it is good.
He kind of snuck it almost over the goalpost, by the way. Hey, but he got it, right?
He did.
He got it. That gave Baylor a 3-0 lead. Utah answered right away, though, a 7-play, 62-yard drive that was really spurred by a long run from Jones for Utah that made it 3-3. Baylor would get the ball back, though, and go on really their best drive of the season. 11 plays, 79 yards, really engineered nicely between Sawyer Robertson, the play calling, the running game. Dominic Richardson, we haven't mentioned his name, but he had a solid game. He had to exit a little bit dealing with an injury, but he came back in, which was good to see. He finished with over 70 yards. He was big on this drive, but it was Sawyer Robertson finishing it off for his first career touchdown.
Dominic Richardson moves up off his left shoulder. Handoff. Nope. Robertson will keep it. He'll run it in. Sawyer Robertson into the end zone. Touchdown Bears. They take the lead on Utah.
That gave Baylor, after the extra point, a 10-3 lead with 3:23 remaining in the first half. Elliot, the defense, held Utah, but Baylor was unable to score. A long field goal missed by Isaiah Hankins near the end of the first half, and so it was 10-3 going into the locker room. Baylor won the toss and deferred, so they get the ball to start the second half. And boy, they bookended the half with 10-plus play scoring drives. This one, 10 plays, 68 yards. But again, unfortunately, the Baylor defense bogged down. They had to settle for the Baylor offense rather bogged down in the red zone. They had to settle for a field goal that made it 13-3. Utah got those 3 points back with a Cole Becker field goal with 4:05 to play in the third quarter. And then the fourth quarter was just a slog. It was war of attrition there in the fourth quarter. The problem was Utah was able to stay out on the field offensively most of the fourth quarter. Baylor was not. Utah finally tied the game up on that drive Elliot mentioned earlier, a 15-play, 88-yard drive. It was Nate Johnson, the running quarterback, who was a nice wrinkle for them late in the game. He tied the game up with a 7-yard run on third down. And there was the Sawyer Robertson interception, right? Those two interceptions in the second half were big. And again, look, obviously neither one of those happened, there's a decent chance Baylor wins the game. But again, I think you and I are both in agreement. Sawyer Robertson looked like a talented young redshirt freshman who's going to play a lot of big games, who at times looked like a redshirt freshman, and unfortunately today in his first start, those interceptions came. But that second one was big. It set up this play that eventually won the game.
Here's the play. Glover in the backfield. Johnson, the quarterback, takes the snap, gives to Glover. Glover is, I was going to say wrapped up, but he breaks free and then runs laterally across the field and then into the end zone for the touchdown. Smart play to run a little clock there by Jalen Glover, and it is a touchdown for Utah.
He did make the mistake of sniffing the goal line, and Mike Smith pushed him in. And look, that gave Baylor a chance, right? Baylor had one play from the 22-yard line that I think you would have taken that chances if you'd said with 17 seconds left, Baylor would have that chance. But that touchdown run and the subsequent extra point with 17 seconds left made it 20-13. Which was the final score in this one, a low-scoring affair today, as I think a lot of people thought that it might be. Again, I think some of the key themes as we roll on here, Elliot, Sawyer Robertson, there's a lot to like. Mm-hmm. He looked like a freshman today, but you can see the talent is there. If he's as you think about Blake Shapen healing up, I think you like what Sawyer can bring as long as he's not available, but he's got to learn. He's got to get the reps, and he made 2 freshman throws, and unfortunately a veteran team like Utah, the back-to-back Pac-12 champion, and now they're trying to maybe close it out for good with a third this year. They were a veteran team, and they knew what to do with those.
Yeah, I mean, in the second half, we didn't have any touchdowns. Utah had 2. In the second half, Utah didn't have any interceptions. We had 2. Right? That's the difference in the game right there.
Yeah.
And so, but that comes with, like you said, having a younger quarterback. I'm not going to sit here and pick on Sawyer for this.
No, exactly.
Like, those are freshman mistakes, and we needed him to step in. And it wasn't until the last drive it took them to 17 seconds on the clock to go and win that game with our backup quarterback. Granted, they're playing out there with their backup guys too, but we went toe-to-toe with them. Man, he went out there, and like I said, he did some things really well. I think his elusiveness, popping out of the pocket, keeping his eyes downfield, being able to deliver the football, I thought he showed us a real drive to get back out there. Now, the only thing that I would, I talked about this earlier, and I'll talk about this again. Quarterback is like a jump shooter, like a shooting guard, right? Number 2, right? Shoot or shoot. If you're a shooter, you need to shoot, right? And I know that we were worried about taking the ball out of his hand because some of those decisions that he made, but guess what? He's going to make mistakes. My hope is that he can power through those. My hope is that he won't give them the ball every time.
Yeah.
And so, even though we did see those interceptions, I do think that you got to keep throwing that football.
It's funny how hard that is at every level, like whether it's high school, college, or the pros, to learn when not to throw. Elliot, you're in the business world. Do you ever have to write something and you start to think about how to say it succinctly, and it's hard? It's like the idea of, I'm sorry this email is so long, I didn't have time to make it short.
Yeah.
There's a discipline in knowing what not to say, and it doesn't come easily to anyone. I think in football we see it, again, how many interceptions was Brett Favre throwing at the next level late in his career, right? Because he just refused to eat the football.
Right.
I mean, I never played this game, but it's clear it's hard. That's a hard discipline to learn. It is hard to know when to pull it down. Hard to know when to pull it down, to throw it away, or take the sack. And for a lot of these guys, when you're in a tight game, it's not going to come right away. I mean, you wish it did. You wish it did. The game might have been different, but you can't really blame the kid for that.
No, I won't. I want him to go out there and make mistakes. Now, I hope they don't cost us the football game, because there's a lot of seniors out here. There's a lot of people that paid to come out and watch us play and really want to see a win. But man, you saw him go out there and fight, and that's all you can ask for. He's got the talent. He's got the size. He's got the arm strength. He's got the precision. He doesn't necessarily have the decision making yet, right? You can be precise and be in the wrong precise spot.
Yeah.
Right. Those 2 interceptions were bad, right? In the first interception, miscommunication. Receiver wasn't even running the route anymore, right? That second one, it's just you're throwing it into triple coverage, right? Best case scenario here, what happens? Ball swatted down. Best case scenario there. But once again, it was because we got pinched into a one-dimensional situation where it's 4th down, and all of a sudden we're trying our 3rd down and we're trying to force it. And so, game awareness comes with playing snaps of football. Right.
Yeah.
That's sometimes you can practice as much as you want. You can watch as much film as you want to, but at the end of the day, you got to go out there and you got to play the game. And so these are some of the things that he's working through. And like I said, if we can get him to just throw the ball away, defense is going to support him. Dom Richardson, I hope he's, he got a little nicked up. I hope he's okay, right?
And he hopes Sawyer's okay, too, if he's dealing with an ankle, rolled ankle.
Sawyer's okay, right? Next week is a week where hopefully those guys don't have to play a ton of snaps of football, right? So they can have some time to rest up for that following week with a really, really big game. This is a certain team about 90 miles south of here that's heading out of the conference. There's a lot of things to be really, really excited about on this team. Do we want the win? Always want the win, right? My blood pressure's spiked.
Yes.
I'm not wearing my Whoop right now, so I don't know exactly how far it spiked. But I know it wasn't good, and I know it would have been in the red zone. But with a new set of eyes, having let the game die down a little bit, a lot of things to be proud of.
There is, but again, they showed this week that they can dramatically improve in a lot of ways from one week to the next. Now, again, everyone always says, when do you improve the most? From week 1 to week 2.
I've never seen it look like this before.
I never have seen it look like this, either. But they've showed an ability to learn. It looks like they're coachable. It looks like they have that ability to step up and improve. They're going to have to keep doing that, right? We've got you're talking about right now another top 15 team in Texas, another one in Kansas State in November. Like there's going to be some tough games on the schedule.
Right.
But what we saw today gives me some encouragement that what this team was last week and even what we feel right now, that you can hope for more than what we saw.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, you just want the team to be competitive, right? I'm sitting here looking at the schedule, not to look too far ahead of Long Island U, but when you Google them, they don't even have a logo next to the name of their university. So I don't.
The Sharks.
The Sharks.
The Sharks. Does it feel more right to say like the Shocks since they're like a Northeastern team? Yeah, like
Shocks.
A little bit of a. I don't know if that's more New England and not Long Island, but those they don't love the hard R's up there.
They don't. They do in fact not.
Northeast Conference, by the way, Long Island. If you're wondering, some schools in that conference you might recognize, maybe Wagner, Sacred Heart. Some names.
Do we recognize those?
I recognize Sacred Heart from basketball and Wagner because they had a couple of draftees this year, and people were like, "Oh, Wagner had a couple guys drafted to NFL
football."
Football, yeah.
Wagner. Where's Wagner?
Staten Island.
Staten Island.
Yeah.
Okay, good for them.
Staten Island. Last week, though, Long Island lost to Ohio, the Bobcats of the MAC, 27-10, and tonight they are playing Bryant in Rhode Island at 6 p.m. And look, opportunity for Baylor to try to put a game together. That it's not about who they're playing. It's about them doing and accomplishing the things that they want to do. That's what next week's going to be about. We can focus on the Big 12 season and who's looming after that later on, but that's what next week's going to be all about. And, yes, it's Long Island, and you would like to have beat Utah today, but you didn't. So you take advantage of what's ahead of you, and next week's a good opportunity to have a winning Sunday and Monday and carry some momentum into Big 12.
Yeah, of course. None of these are conference games, right? Texas State isn't in the conference. Long Island isn't in the conference, and Utah certainly this year isn't in the conference. And so we still have a whole lot to play for. Would we prefer to be 2-0 right now? That's a dumb question, right? Of course we want to be 2-0 right now. And I see a lot of the folks that are commenting on this stuff, and I hear you guys. I understand your frustration with how things played out, but I got to tell you, from week 1 to week 2, this is by far the biggest leap I've seen a Baylor team make between week 1 and week 2.
Well, and I see someone asking, if this team is in the learning mode, what's the ceiling? And I think my point that I'm trying to make, and I would never, I would never claim to be the best prognosticator or things of that nature. But I think the point I'm trying to make, with this defense and with the offense, I don't know what the ceiling is, and I think that's a good thing right now. I think if we felt like we knew what the team's ceiling was, that's probably not great. Certainly not after last week. But I think the improvement we saw, the steps forward, the talent of some of the guys out there, and hopefully learning from some of the shortcomings today, I don't know what the ceiling is, but I feel like we've seen from the Big 12 in years past, and I don't see any reason to think this year there's not going to be a lot of close games. There's going to be a lot of close games like today's in the Big 12. Can you learn from this and find ways to close it out? And that's going to be the challenge for the Bears. But I saw things today, and I think you did too, that make me encouraged that that's within their grasp.
Yeah, I don't want to I think we did our best last week to watch that and talk about it with a set of rose-colored glasses on, right? And try to find the best from it. But there was a lot of things that were really frustrating, really bad about it. My perspective is entirely shift this week on what this team is. The big issues we had were offensive and defensive line, was a push in the middle, right? Was getting clear run lanes for running backs and getting clear lanes for the linebackers to run to. Give them a clear read. And the other thing I talked about is make the guy in front of you right, right? Whether that is defensive line being in the right spot, linebackers being in the right spot, safeties filling, right? You saw it consistently, right? Mm-hmm. And the other thing, too, up until they started getting tired in the fourth quarter, is just the importance of getting off the field on third down defensively, right? Bringing different pressures, being in position. There were times we got off the field on third down because of pass breakups, right? How many times over the last, I would say, 2 seasons do we feel like on third down there's nobody to be found?
Right.
Right? Is that an us issue? Are we out of coverage? Is somebody just that much faster? What's happening that's causing these things to present themselves? And it was very refreshing to see that we were competing.
It was.
At a lot of different levels.
Well, we talked about Matt Powledge has said that part of what he's trying to bring is kind of getting back to that description of what Coach Aranda said when he got here. You don't know where the pressure is going to come from. You're competing at the point of attack. We saw that with the pass breakups today. I think we saw them doing today what they said, this is what we're trying to do.
That's
right?
what we expected to see.
Right.
Right. And we saw it and the other thing, too, is that we rotate a lot of guys in on defense. And so the stat sheet tends to gravitate towards maybe your biggest guys out there, but you saw a lot of people go out there and make plays. And so depth is a big factor as we get deeper into the season, because you're going to have people that get nicked and bruised and unfortunately aren't able to play certain games. But I saw bodies out there flying around that the numbers of folks I haven't seen, I don't even recognize them, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of new bodies out there, not only on the offensive line, but also on the defensive line as well as in the linebacking core. And they were out there and they made plays and they were hungry and they were disappointed when they got taken off the field. And those are the kind of things that you're looking for, right? You don't want somebody that's got their head down, doesn't look like they're excited to step on the field. You want somebody that looks like I'm trying to suplex somebody out there on the field. And
they did that several times
today.
Saw that.
Yeah.
And I think right now, obviously, there's two sides of the coin. There's the microscope and the telescope. The microscope is, right now you look, this team is 0-2, and that's not good. They've got to build on it. It's got to start next week. They've got to get to where they're winning Big 12 games. These next couple of weeks, these next 3 weeks, are going to tell us a lot, right? This team needs to find a way to steal a game. Hopefully 2, but they're going to need to find a way to win in Orlando or beat UT here in Waco. Hopefully both. Have we seen enough to say with confidence that they're going to do one or both of those? No, not yet. Have we seen enough to say this team has it within them to get there? I think the answer is yes. They got to find a way to get at least one of those to start Big 12 season. But I think that the desire to make bold declarations at this point in the season, that's just not where this team is right now. I think last year when you had a team that was picked to win the Big 12, I think that set a standard that kind of started making you nervous early when things didn't go on. This team's at a different spot. I think you see what you can build on. And again, we're not going to know a whole lot next week either, right? And if we do, it's probably not the greatest, but can they improve on today even a little bit more and then do so in the start of Big 12? That's when you really start saying, okay, here's what we know, and what we know about this team with some certainty. I think the encouraging thing is after today, there's a positive uncertainty. There's a positive uncertainty, and you can build on it with all these young guys.
Positive uncertainty, huh? Is that the name of this?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah, but you're right. You're right. I mean, this team can play. They can keep up, right? They can win. Should have won today.
If the defense didn't look good, I wouldn't be saying this.
Yeah.
If the defense didn't look good, I would 100% not be saying that. But I see a lot of young guys being scrappy out there, and that makes me think, and improving from last week. That's what makes me think that.
Just hungry and scrappy. But also to your point, defenses are only as good as their rushing offense because of what happens here today. And the other thing that we saw offensively is that we rushed for almost 100 yards in the first half. Of those, 65 came in the second quarter, 31 came in the first quarter. Second half, we only had 25, right? So that's an area that we know we can improve on. And I think there's different things that we can do. But, yes, defensively, that ceiling is high. I think offensively that ceiling is high. I just wanted to see the offensive line be in position to where they had to win one-on-one to see if it was that we were losing last week because we were in the wrong position, or is it the personnel that we're looking at? You saw a new left tackle in there today, right? You're starting to see some different people get mixed in on that offensive line to figure out what the best unit is. And so it's good to see that coaches look at this and say, hey, look, we see you on film what you're putting out there. Either we can rock with it or we can't, right? If we can't rock with it, we're trying to win football games, so move it around. So I was highly encouraged by what we saw out here today, really on both sides of the ball. Offense stagnated for a little bit there in the second half. That's something we can work on. I'm interested to see what we'll do. Right, I used the quick game as an example. We haven't seen screens. We saw a little bit of options. Right, a lot of the offense that we ran in the third and fourth quarter didn't have the same look. We saw kind of the pitches. Right, we saw that as another way to get people wide and go east and west instead of north and south. And so, what wrinkles do you see come in? How do people recover from maybe some of the injuries that we're dealing with? How does that affect how we game plan? Right, there's 1,000 factors that go into this. But what I do know is that we got the dogs out there that can go out there and win any game in this schedule. Right now, what we do from a decision-making standpoint, execution week to week, penalties, little things here and there. But, yeah, we can compete. Yeah, that the ceiling is high.
Well, we are going to mention some dogs. We're going to name some of those coming up on Coffee is for Closers, the car, the steak knives, the doghouse. If you want to comment on Facebook Live or on YouTube or on Twitter with the hashtag BUFanForum, we would love to hear your thoughts. Coffee is for Closers is next. We'll take a timeout and come back after this. It's the Postgame Fan Forum on the Baylor Sports Media Network.
For a limited time, get high-performance, ultra-reliable internet from Astound Broadband, starting as low as $25 per month. And now we have mobile, too. Visit astound.com to order the #1 rated internet. Create the perfect plan with fast speeds to meet all your needs. Plus, get a 2-year price lock when you upgrade to award-winning gig internet. No contracts, no hidden monthly fees, and no data caps. Switch today. Head to astound.com or call 1-800-4ASTOUND. Restrictions apply. See website for details.
Kids can now join the Baylor Cup Club, the official kids club of Baylor Athletics. Fans 12 and under can register for the low cost of $25 and gain exclusive benefits and access to Baylor Athletics events. Members receive free admission to select events, exclusive giveaway access, and their own membership package. To register your cub, please visit BaylorBears.com/Cub Club. Sign your cub up today and sick 'em Bears.
During Ram Power Days at Allen Samuels, our great selection of new cars and trucks come with amazing deals and competitive financing that makes you ask, why shop anywhere else? The new 2023 Ram trucks are designed to be durable, functional, and stylish, with premium truck options like luxurious leather trim seating options, exceptional legroom and storage, plus surround view camera. Ram trucks give you that first-class feel. Allen Samuels in Waco, the place to shop Ram trucks. Come see our large selection today or browse online at allensamuelsdcj.com.
Come see why Green Eye Associates is voted best in Waco year after year. Enjoy exceptional service and care from Dr. Leanne Green alongside her dedicated optometrist and staff. Receive trustworthy insights on your eye health. Enjoy the impressive variety of contacts and eyewear and work with the most experienced optical team in Waco. Don't miss the new state-of-the-art dry eye therapies that rejuvenate the eyes and face with safe, non-invasive treatments to restore comfort and quality of life. Green Eye Associates, official optometrist of Baylor Athletics.
It's time for Coffee is for Closers. The car, the steak knives, the doghouse. Tweet your winners with hashtag BUFanForum or comment on YouTube or Facebook Live.
Yes, it is that time. Coffee is for Closers, where we take a look at the top individuals or units in the game today. We also pick an area to put in the doghouse and hopefully improve on next week against Long Island. Again, if you want to comment, hashtag BUFanForum or go to the Baylor Athletics Facebook Live setup there. You can comment there or on YouTube. You know, Elliot, I think it probably won't come as a shock to anyone who's been listening that as we talk about the superlatives in the game today, that at least mine, I'm assuming yours, there's going to be some defensive heavy areas in terms of the areas that the guys or groups that get the honors, the car and the steak knives, and that's where I would start. I would start out today. I have a hard time picking one person on the defense to give it to. I mean, Matt Jones showed some positive things. Mike Smith did. I'm going to go ahead and give mine to the symmetry in the past week between Matt Powledge, the coaches, and the players. There was massive improvement
100%.
in that area that gave us a chance to win today. So that's where I would give the car.
Yeah, don't do that thing where you lift like 3 different people so that I all of a sudden don't have somebody that I can throw in there too. You're like, I think Powledge and I think Elliot. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But
fair point.
I do think that Powledge absolutely deserves deserves a car. I'm just going to go with the defensive line in general.
Yeah.
Now, you do actually have measurables that you can compare, right? Because you looked at those guys last week and you just thought to yourself, they look out of sorts, right? And I think the offensive line and the defensive line and how they practice that week is shown on Saturday. You can tell both of those guys got after it today. But some of the numbers, look at this. Kyler Jordan, Gabe Hall. Kyler Jordan, half tackle for loss. Gabe Hall, tackle and a half for loss. TJ Franklin, 2 tackles for loss. And a Devontae Tesno, freshman, number 59, tackle for loss, right? That's a lot of havoc being caused across that defensive line, and I think that's what we were really looking for last week is who's going to cause a problem? Who's going to make things tough on the other team? We kept looking for the guy. Who's going to make the sack? Who's going to make the quarterback hurry?
And it wasn't one guy.
Derek, we're not even talking about the pass breakups or the quarterback hurries, right? 7 pass breakups, and a chunk of those came from the defensive line as well. A lot of them came from the linebacking group, so I'm going to give them their credit too. But just a lot of production out of the defensive line. They got up for today, and we need them to have that same hunger and get after it week in, week out. Because now that they've shown us they can do it, we expect it, and they should expect it too.
And again, the numbers, I think, bear out in a lot of ways the defense was more than good enough to win this game today. When it comes to the steak knives, again, it's hard for me to pick one guy, one area on the defense. So I think in a lot of ways it's just the defensive effort that gets it for me. I'm going to, because I want to single out one guy who we really haven't singled out a whole lot on the show today, I'm going to give the steak knives today, Elliot, to Dominic Richardson. He was kind of running into a brick wall last week, and really I'm just using the steak knives as an excuse to highlight what he did today. 14 carries for 77 yards. He had a long of 16. That means that he didn't get them all in one big chunk, right? He was pretty regularly around 3, 4, 5 yards on the ball game, and frankly, it was tough sledding. That Utah defense held Florida last week to 13 yards. Period. The entire team, not one running back, but the entire team. Last week, the running game never got going. It tailed off in the second half today, right? In fact, I would say precipitously. But I think that what we saw today from Dominic Richardson kind of saw why I think we've seen Coach Aranda's enthusiasm about him. Hopefully things open up for Richard Reese, but today Dominic Richardson made things happen where there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity.
Yeah, I think you can definitely point that out. Now, the other thing that I'll tell you too is that we don't have a rule that if you pick an entire position group that you can't then give the steak knives to somebody in that group.
That's true,
right? We gave away a bunch of Eldorados to the defensive line, and I'm going to specifically pick T.J. Franklin out of that group. 2 tackles for loss, right, and a sack on the day. This guy is somebody that we need to be a dominant force on the defensive line. That line goes as he goes. I think him and Gabe Hall are really the 2 guys on that line that we're going to look to the most. And you saw him show up. I mean, on the stat sheet, you get the sack and the 2 tackles for losses. But what was more important than that to me was the fact that he was in the backfield all
the time. There's a little bit of a gut check game for them as veterans, right?
It was, because it was like, hey man, big dog's coming into town. Are you going to let somebody run over you? Because here's my thing: is that even if you don't get the win, beat him in the mouth. Hit him in the mouth. Make him, hobble off the field after the game against us, right? You need to be downhill and hitting. And unfortunately, we have some folks that do that too. But that was a grudge match of a football game. And you cannot have a tough, hard-nosed game without a great defensive line. And I was really impressed with how they played. And T.J. Franklin in particular, he's a guy that needs to produce for us. He's a guy that if he goes out there and he has 5 to 7 sacks this year, this is I'm not going to put a number on it, a team that wins a lot of football games.
Do you remember, Elliot, as we were talking before the show today, the pregame show today, the last time that Baylor had a top 15 non-conference opponent here in Waco was that never-to-be-forgotten TCU win that you were a part of that really set the stage for RG3's Heisman victory. It was a dramatic game. But I'm curious. I think what do you remember about heading into your junior, senior year when you were one of the veterans?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that sense, like, oh, I got to be a guy like every game. I don't get like you don't have the excuses. You look around you and you're like, oh, they're counting on me to be that guy. And I think for Gabe, for TJ, that's kind of their charge each year. That means the numbers are always going to be the same, but like it's got to be that pressure, that effort, that intensity, like 10 more times, 13 more times, whatever it is this year. 10 more times, 11 more times this year.
Yeah, you got to get your life right on and off the field, right? I think once you step into a more senior role in the team, how you do anything is how you do everything. And so for me, it didn't just affect how I approached the game on the field, but it affected how I lived my life in terms of my sleep, my hydration, my appetite, who I was spending my time with, right? It really did shift kind of the whole environment around me. And the more I understood the people that I needed to be with and the type of commitment that I needed to make to watching film on my own with people spending extra time at the facility with Coach Bennett and the group, the more I understood that, the better we played. I'm not going to say we went 6-0 at home my senior year because of me, but a lot of those things that you do, you pass those off to the guys around you because I think, one of 3 seniors on that defense. I think it was me, Tracy Robinson, Nick John Baptiste. I think we were the only 3 seniors that were on that roster. And so you had a bunch of young guys around us, and they were tough, hard-nosed football players, but they were younger. And so they needed somebody around them to really help them and guide them. And, we all have our limitations, understand those. But make sure that when you step on the football field, you do your best to direct those men because they're looking at you to be the guy. And so that's why I was so happy to see from week 1 to week 2 because I think our first –
I'm going to throw Matt Jones in there too, by the way.
Matt Jones is another guy. Yeah, Matt Jones is another guy. But that TCU game I think was really kind of it was kind of one of those points where you look at it and you think to yourself, if we lose this football game, what does that do to the confidence of this team? Right? You have a team like TCU come in, right? But when you win it, you start to get that edge to you. Start to sharpen your teeth a little bit. And so gut check, you don't always have to win a gut check game, but you need to go out there and put your mark on it. And that's what he did tonight.
He did for sure. And, again, they're going to have to do that each game. And, again, I think, too, you did some positive things that you got to build on and start winning. I think one of my worries was, I think you kind of alluded to this, that TCU win gave the 2011 Bears momentum.
Yeah.
I've always felt, coming into the year, I've kind of felt like this season could have momentum one way or the other, depending on the way it started off. And it hasn't started off in a positive way. What we saw today gave me some hope that they can change that momentum from week 2 to week 3 and then really even looking back beyond week 4 and 5. But to that point, the momentum's going to start with those veterans on the defense. And today they showed that they were up to the challenge. Maybe not more than up to the challenge. They were up to the challenge and they can build on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Played really well, gave us a chance to win.
All right, the doghouse, Elliot. You look at the Baylor offense in the second half, the numbers fell off. There were a couple of turnovers that we've talked about, the fact you've got a young redshirt quarterback and young redshirt freshman quarterback. He made a couple of redshirt freshman plays that unfortunately played a big role in this game. He was also in second and long, third and long a lot. So my car went to kind of the symmetry between the defensive coordinator, coaches, and defensive players this week. And, again, this is tough because I thought that there were some things we saw this week, the effort, the energy, the intensity that were good. But I'm going to say for my doghouse is going to be to improve next week, that symmetry between the personnel you have, the situations you put them in, and executing when you have those opportunities.
I was going to say, I feel like an armchair quarterback right now.
Yeah.
Like picking this one apart.
Well, we're hosting a postgame show.
Yeah, right. And so it's like, because I think what I mean by that is I could easily just sit there and kind of pick apart what went wrong. But I think you're right. I think what I'm a little bit struggling with was the inability to simplify the game and identify and make adjustments late in that second half when we couldn't run the ball anymore. That is hard. Now, I don't expect you to completely change an offense on the fly because things aren't necessarily going your way because you want to win it your way. But there's also got to be a safety valve or a way that you can make an adjustment to it that can create that same outcome that you want, but maybe looks or feels a little bit different than how you normally do it, right? There's a couple games in the past that we've had where we've had major injuries to players, where we maybe didn't have certain positions that could play the way we wanted to, and coaching staff went in, drew up a new offense, and kind of found a way to get that production on the field that looked and felt a little bit different, right? We don't want to change everything, right? We want to get really good at what we do. So I understand wanting to, continue to do what you do, but throw a couple little things in there that are new, right? That quick game has never really been a part of this, right? The screen game isn't a major part of this. We did see the toss, and we did see the option today, right? So those are 2 new wrinkles that we saw. So we know that we can add things into it. So it's just like, how do we create that same look but make it feel different or maybe use different personnel to get it done? And how do we work that in when The way that we want to do it, which is just downhill, same thing over and over again, doesn't work. That's what I would like to see.
And, I think theoretically, let's just say they had called that pass interference on Keytron Jackson, proved to be the last play of the game, and let's say they call that and Baylor somehow finds a way to win. I'm still saying the same things here. Still saying the same things here, and I think that's kind of what we look at here. I mean, Baylor, if Baylor had found a way to win, I think these areas that Baylor's going to need to improve on for next week and then beyond remain the same. The things we saw that they did improve on are as well. So that is Coffey is for closers here on the Postgame Fan Forum. We're live at McLean Stadium after a 20-13 Baylor loss to Utah today. The Bears will look for their first win of the season next week against Long Island. We'll preview that and look around the Big 12 when we come back to wrap things up after this. Postgame Fan Forum back after this here on the Baylor Sports Media Network.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Are you a proud Baylor fan? Do you love prizes? The Baylor Sports app allows fans to track their attendance across athletic events and earn rewards. Baylor Athletics wants to reward the most loyal fans, so register online today at BaylorBoldRewards.com or download the Baylor Sports app straight to your phone. Prizes this year are better than ever, so start earning your points today. And sick 'em Bears.
No matter which road you take, the Toyota Tundra is the perfect way to navigate it. On your path, you're your own boss and set your own hours.
Look at that sunrise.
You may find yourself in some pretty remote places.
Whoa, that view. Amazing.
Or in places where pastimes become stories that become legends.
I got one. It's a keeper. Hey, get a picture. No one's going to believe this.
And each day ends binge-watching stars and dreaming about all the things you'll do the next day.
You know what? I'm catching a bigger fish tomorrow.
Built to follow your path, the Toyota Tundra. This Texan knows how to sick 'em. Toyota is a proud partner of Baylor Athletics. Visit your local Toyota dealer or Toyota.com to check out the rugged Tundra today. Toyota, let's go places. See packages and options at Toyota.com for feature availability.
On that Texas State team that played for you.
You're listening to Baylor Football on the Baylor Sports Media Network.
The office for the Bears ultimately as they fall 20-13 to 12th-ranked Utah. The Bears 0-2 on the season. Utah gets a touchdown with 17 seconds left to end the game. A strong defensive effort for the Bears today. Ultimately, it falls short. They're going to try to build on that in another 11 a.m. game next week against Long Island. We're going to talk about that here in just a minute, but give you a couple of scores from around the Big 12. Baylor playing the early game today. One other early game today, Kansas State with a 42-13 win over Troy, the 15th-ranked Wildcats with a big victory today. Last night it was Kansas with a Power 5 non-conference victory over Illinois from the Big 10, 34-23. There's not going to be any games on this Big 12 schedule that you can take even remotely lightly.
That's a good football
this
team,
year.
boss.
And I think you look at that based on what you see from everyone else and what we've seen from this team. It's all going to be a dogfight. 2 games going on right now in Ames, Iowa, with a 17-3 lead over Iowa State. That game 5 minutes into the second half. Start of the fourth quarter in Provo, BYU with a 34-10 lead over Southern Utah. So it's Baylor and Long Island this coming Sunday. I think a lot of people have seen Long Island on the schedule and thought, Long Island? I think some people might remember that initially Baylor had Louisiana Tech on the schedule for a couple of upcoming seasons starting in 2020. COVID wiped out that game, and then they pulled out. They pulled out of that contract. Louisiana Tech did. Baylor's got Long Island on the schedule next week, and I think you look at this game right now, Elliot. It's an opportunity to have another really good week of practice. You can't proverbially grow weary and well-doing, right? It's obvious to me that the Bears had – we heard positive things, and you saw what they did on the field compared to last week. There are a lot of things you could tell Baylor took advantage of practice, and we saw a lot of that improvement from week 1 to week 2 in certain areas. Now you got to do it again. That's the harsh reality. You got to do it again, and you can't think you don't have to just because it's Long Island instead of 12th ranked Utah.
No.
Right? You got to do it again.
Right.
And you do that, you can carry some positive momentum you would expect into the following week.
Yeah, of course. And this is a game that I want us to take some chances on. I want to see us throw the ball downfield. I want to see us bring pressures. I want to see a lot of the things that we did today, but I really want to see us let loose, not show too much of what we're going to run, because I don't want Texas to have that film on us. They've already got 2 games at this point. But I do want us to go out there and be able to play a little bit, because there's some mistakes that we're going to make, but I want us to continue to see the development that we saw from week 1 to week 2, because the thing about last week is that we let it loose. We've had to play full speed, so maybe some of those mistakes we were making got smoothed over a little bit, but now on a big stage against another team that figured out how to scheme it, those mistakes were small mistakes are now really big mistakes. And so my hope is that next week, if there's some things that we will improve on from this week to next week, we still continue to go out there, fly around, and then potentially expose those mistakes so that we can fix them up that next week and then come out and see the same kind of development from week 2 to week 3 that we saw from week 1 to week 2.
Yeah, it happens quickly. 1 week ago at this time, the season had not begun.
Golly, man.
1 week ago, from 1 week ahead from now, 1 week from today at this time, the non-conference season's going to be over.
That's crazy.
So, like, it's, there's no, the room for excuses is pretty much gone at this point. Anytime you're an 0-2 football team, you have that's certainly the case. But next week at this time, you're going to be knocking on the door of Big 12 play and a pretty big matchup right off the bat. I like what you said. You got to come out and be aggressive. And, I mean, you got to win, obviously, and I think we expect that. Of course, we expected that last week, and it didn't happen. But we expect that against Long Island, and what you said, I think what you want to see, what fans want to see, and what we want to see is that improvement that actually leads to the kind of game that you expect this team should play against a team from the Northeastern Conference, right? I mean, that's the thing that I think will really worry people if it becomes a dogfight. But if Baylor comes out with the defensive intensity they had today, improvement from Sawyer Robertson, I think they can carry some positive momentum that we're talking about next week at this time.
Yeah, I mean, and once again, we caught the perfect storm with Texas State. Let's talk about this again. 53 new players, completely new staff. We had a lot of new players. We had a new defensive coordinator in there.
We still should have won.
We still should have won the football game.
And I know you're not saying we shouldn't have. I'm just throwing that in there.
We should always beat them. We should always beat them. I hope my dad's listening. We should always beat them. Mm-hmm. And so but a lot of things fell into place for it not to work out, right? But you saw the improvement the next week. Next week, I don't think anybody's going to take Long Island lightly because we don't have a win yet.
Right.
Right? So, sorry, you're going to catch us in front.
We need to get right.
You're going to be in front of a Mack truck, right? We need a dub, right? We're going to go out there and get it. But once again, go out there, expose the mistakes, because once you expose the mistakes, once you bring them to light, then you can fix them. And so that's my hope, is that we've got one more tune-up before it's about to get real tough in conference. This is a bloodbath of a conference this year. This is like Big 12 basketball, right? It's going to be tough. It's not a game that I look at on this schedule and think to myself, well, this is an easy one. This is a shoe-in. There's just not. And so going to have to tee up and get ready to go.
Mm-hmm. And, this team showed an ability this week to kind of tune out the noise. Got to do it again. You got to do it again in maybe an even bigger way right now, because instead of being 0-1, you're 0-2. But they showed the ability to tune it out and improve. Now they got to do it. Now they got to do it again. Hopefully get a little more healthy, get Sawyer and Dominic, to whatever extent Dominic got banged up. Hopefully he's ready. Sawyer's feeling good, and then you get closer to eventually getting Garmin Randolph, Devin Lemire, and Blake Shapen back as you get later into the month. But it's Baylor and Long Island this coming Saturday morning. Elliot, before I give a number, let me, by the way, mention the high right now on Saturday. High of 81, low of 66.
Stop it.
Let's just see if it stays that way. But come on out early, cheer on the Bears, try to get them help them get that first win. I thought the fans who were here today made some noise, brought some energy. You're going to need that again next week. Appreciate everyone who joined in the conversation. We got these new outlets that the Fan Forum is broadcast on, streamed on, Elliot. Of course, we've always been on our flagship station, ESPN Central Texas, but we've got Facebook Live. We've interacted with people on Twitter, and now we've got YouTube as well. Appreciate everyone tuning in, joining in the conversation, and we'll continue to build on that.
I was going to say we'll do our best to try to weed through the information, but we're looking at YouTube. We're looking at Facebook. We see you guys, right? We'll find a way to weave it into the conversation.
People see our faces going back and forth.
We appreciate the engagement. Yeah, just don't know. I'm not sending out a bunch of text messages. We're trying to do our best to hear what you guys are talking about. But, yeah, we're doing a more concerted effort and making sure that we're hearing from you guys. And, giving you the information that you want to hear. And so keep listening. We appreciate everybody out there. I know it's a little bit tougher when you're 0-2 to start the season, but you guys are out there really, really making this all worthwhile. So we appreciate what you guys do.
Appreciate everyone joining in. We'll be back next week right about this time, 11 o'clock. Baylor takes on Long Island. We'll have the Baylor Alumni Tailgate Show from Touchdown Alley at 9. Network pregame with J-Mo, JJ, and Ricky at 10:30. Kickoff at 11, and then sometime probably around 3.5 to 4 hours after 11 o'clock, we'll be back on the air here from McLean Stadium. Elliot, it's been fun. See if we can get that first win next week and then go from there.
That's right.
All right. Appreciate everyone joining in today. Want to say thanks to our producer, Aaron Sexton. Aaron's Saturdays have become very, very busy this year, Aaron. We appreciate Aaron's always been a busy guy, but as he's engineering these broadcasts or producing these broadcasts at our flagship station, ESPN Central Texas, from Alumni Tailgate Show through the Fan Forum, Aaron, we really appreciate all you and your crew back there are doing, as well as the Baylor Playfly team and Bob Baker, our on-site engineer. Appreciate you all setting us up. Thanks to everyone who listened in and commented as well. We'll be back with you next week. Again, the final today, Baylor falls to 12th-ranked Utah by a score of 20-13. Fall to 0-2 on the season, but they'll look for that first win next week against Long Island. We'll see you then. Good night for now.
All right, guys. We'll talk to y'all next week. Thanks for the shout-out, Derek. I appreciate it, man.
This evening.
Thanks for the kind words. I do appreciate it, man.
Today's game.
Later, guys. Sick and Bears.
Texas Farm Bureau Insurance.